In the early times, family was everything. And if you wanted to become rich, like extremely rich, you did it with your whole family. That's exactly what Mayer Amschel Rothschild, the man who made the famous Rothschild family what it is today, did. Regarded as one of the most famous European banking family dynasties, which goes back as far as the last 18th century, the Rothschild family grew a considerable economic influence in Europe alongside its numerous charity work. They were so rich that in the 1870s, they loaned money to the French government for the payment of war indemnities. But that wasn't all. They also gave a huge loan to the British government, allowing the country to become a major shareholder in the Suez Canal Company. Over the years, the Rothschild family became a pioneer in the development of international finance, with branches in Vienna, London, Naples, Paris, and native Frankfurt. While several reports put the family's net worth at around $1.2 trillion, its company Rothschild and Co. is way bigger than you think, with a team totaling 4,200 talent financial services specialists in over 40 countries across the world, and a total asset of $14.7 billion. Let's head to Frankfurt, where the story of Rothschild and Co. started. Weekend Business Chronicles tell extraordinary business stories. Please subscribe to our channel to help us make more videos. In the mid-1740s, precisely 1744, Mayer Amschel Rothschild was born in Judengasse, Frankfurt's Jewish ghetto, in an event that would later change the course of history for the Rothschild family. During his early years, Mayer Amschel started as an antique dealer, buying and trading precious antiques to people who had love for them, before eventually expanding into financial services for the noble German people. However, due to medieval Christian theology, there was a restriction on working with money, which pushed Jewish families to work in the open banking and money-lending positions that were left by the Christian society. This was also where the several stereotypes about the Jews and where their money came from. Despite the fact that the only reason several Jews got involved in finance work was because Christianity had left a gap in the market. In no time, Mayer Amschel Rothschild's work with several German nobles spread around Europe as he brought his sons, most of whom were outside Germany, into what later became a family business. While Mayer was successful working for the nobles, it was his position as the court agent for Wilhelm Ajax, Landgraver of Hesse-Kassel, that made him a really prominent man, as he was in charge of the financial responsibilities of the Germans in the French Revolution and Napoleonic Wars. When Napoleon eventually invaded Hesse and drove Wilhelm into exile, he entrusted a large part of his money to Mayer, who later used it to invest in his son Nathan's financial dealings in London. Mayer's gamble to invest money paid off, as by the time Wilhelm returned, the money had produced lots of interest. The singular move cemented the name and trustworthiness of the Rothschild family with money, giving Mayer more leverage to shape and decide how big the Rothschild family dynasty would become. The war was particularly important to the history of the Rothschild family, as it meant they were able to offer several loans to warring princes, smuggle items, and legally trade key products like wheat, cotton, colonial produce, and arms. It also meant that they could carry out transfers between the British Isles and the continent that Napoleon had vainly attempted to close to British trade. After the war, peace brought stability and more growth to the Rothschild family business, as its banking group continued its international business dealings, although it became much of an agent in securities, insurance company stocks, and also shares in several industrial companies. As a result, the Rothschild family successfully adapted to the growing Industrial Revolution era and took place in the economic growth throughout Europe with its coal, railway, metallurgical, and ironworking investments. The family's banking business continued to expand and achieve a huge milestone position in the oil world trade and non-ferrous metals. However, its old oil-plastic position was majorly threatened by several new joint stock banks and deposit or commercial banks in both France and England, as well as the several German states. By the last quarter of 19th century, the Rothschild Group had lost its place as the first banking consortium, as other groups in the United States and Europe had grown richer, stronger, and more enterprising. However, the two guidelines set by Mayer Amschel Rothschild for the family's business operation is to conduct all of its transactions together and never aim for too much profit, helped in compensation for the unavoidable risk, which is involving in handing down the business to future generations, not all whose members are best qualified to run. The origin of what we know today as Rothschild and Co. Company can be traced back to the early 19th century when Nathan Mayer Rothschild, the third child of Mayer Amschel Rothschild, first settled in Manchester, England. There he started a business in textile tradings and finances. After staying a while in Manchester, Nathan Mayer moved to London, where he eventually established N.M. Rothschild and Sons Compact in 1811 at New Court, which remains to this day the location of Rothschild and Co. headquarters. As a result of establishing this company, Nathan Mayer was able to make a fortune as he entered to the bond market. Within a few years of setting up the company, N.M. Rothschild's Sons grew exponentially, becoming one of the largest banks in the entire world that dominated the bond and financial market. Historian Niall Ferguson later explained in 1999 how big the company was. He said, "For most of the 19th century, N.M. Rothschild was part of the biggest bank in the world, which dominated the international bond market. For a contemporary equivalent, one has to imagine a merger between Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan Chase & Co., and probably Goldman Sachs too, as well perhaps as the International Monetary Fund, given the 19th century Rothschild role in stabilizing the finances of numerous governments." One of the major reasons for the company's early success was that it took a leading role in financing and managing of the subsidiaries transferred by the British government to its allies during the Napoleonic Wars in the early part of the 19th century. By creating several networks of agents, shippers and couriers, the bank was able to offer funds to the Duke of Wellington's army in Spain and Portugal. In 1888, the Rothschild Bank made an arrangement to loan the Prussian government £5 million and issue bonds for more government loans. The company's provision of other complex, innovative financing for the government projects became a mainstay of the bank's business activity for a large part of the century. By 1825, the financial growth of N.M. Rothschild and Sons in the city of London became increasingly strong, and it was capable of supplying enough coins to the Bank of England to help it prevent a major liquidity crisis. After a successful reign as the head of the London branch, Nathan Mayer Rothschild was succeeded by his eldest son, Lionel de Rothschild, who under his reign was able to finance the British government's purchase of the Suez Canal in 1975. Lionel de Rothschild also started a successful investment in railways, just like his uncle in France was doing. In 1869, Lionel de Rothschild's son, Alfred de Rothschild, became a director of one of the banks in England, serving for 20 years. He was one of the persons who represented the British government at the Brussels International Monetary Conference in 1892. There were also other notable moments in the company's early days. The Rothschild Bank was responsible for Cecil Rhodes' funding in the development of the British South African Company. In the same way, Leopold de Rothschild helped administer the Rhodes estate after his death in 1902 and helped set up the Rhodes Scholarship Scheme at Oxford University. In 1873, the Rothschild Frères of Paris and N.M. Rothschild and Sons of London joined with other investors to buy Rio Tinto Copper Mines, a Spanish government's money-losing company. After its purchase, the new owners restructured the company, turning it into a largely profitable business. And by 1905, Rothschild & Co. had more than 30% interest in the company. After the bank invested in Rio Tinto copper mines, the French and English Bank of Rothschild came together to loan money to and invest in De Beers diamond mines in South Africa, becoming the largest shareholder then. During that period, Rothschild & Co. saw more success as it continued to expand its operation. There are many who believe that the company's success can also be traced back to the family's founding beliefs and personalities. The founders of the Rothschild Consortium, Amschel, Nathan, Jacob, Solomon, and Carl, were all unequally gifted, and this was the very essential factor in Rothschild & Co. Nathan and Jacob stood out from the Theft brothers majorly due to the force of their personalities. Particularly, Nathan could be described as hard, sarcastic, and deliberately boorish. Jacob, who had the same features as Nathan, also possessed an alleviating attitude of some refinement due to the fact that he lived in the more polished area of France. The five brothers had unequal successors that took over the company's reign. For instance, if Alphonse in Paris was a worthy successor of his father Jacob, then his own son Edouard didn't have the stronger personality and figure that his position needed. However, Edouard's son, Guy, showed an all-round exceptional ambition and adaptability, confirming the constant element in the family's history for a century-and-a-half strong capacity for grabbing opportunities and adapting in the business world as well as in politics. As future successive generations of the Rothschild family emerged, they were also similarly active in international finance and politics. Despite the first group of Rothschilds came as strangers to their new countries, unfamiliar with the spoken languages and the customs of the locals, and also subject to competition and jealousy from local bankers. They stood out from everyone simply because of their fierce will to acquire place in the sun. This is exactly what the Rothschild family was all about. By the start of its second generation, when the sons of the first 5 founding brothers, quite notably Lionel Nathan and Anthony in London, and Gustave and Alphonse in Paris, entered the business, the Rothschild family became more polished and refined. They also became nationalized and naturalized to the point where they blended into leadership positions without losing any of their necessary family attributes. Historians claim that the young Rothschild education and the extremely worldly existence of the heads of various houses helped to create this true mutation. At the same time, they were also making influential moves in the national politics and economy of their countries as greatly as they influenced themselves. Alphonse was a great example of this feat. As head of the International Banking Syndicate from 1871 to 1872, during which saw him place the 2 French Great Loans, later known as the Liberation Loans after Prussia defeated France, could boast without prize that his influence had given the French government chief, Adolphe Thiers, a long term in power. During that same period, although, 3 years later, in 1875, Lionel in London, who had been a member of the House of Commons for 17 prior years, was able to give the British government a valuable £4 million on a very short notice that allowed the government to become the major stakeholder in the Suez Canal, in a historic moment of the country's history. Without a doubt, each generation of the Rothschild family was truly gifted, a fact that has majorly contributed to how big Rothschild and Co. is today. The First World War played a huge role in the success of the Rothschild and Co. It marked a change in fortune for the family. When the war ended, several of Rothschild banks started a gradual transition into the advisory work market, as well as raising finances for commercial concerns, including its London branch. Towards the mid-19th century, the entrance of the Austrian arm of the Rothschild Bank was given to the Nazis, ending a century-long reign at the heart of the Central European banking. During the Second World War, which began in 1939, the families in Austria and France were scattered. A year before that, the Compagnie de Chemin de Fer de Paris à Hollands, which had undergone a merger with the Chemins de Fer du Midi, was nationalized with 5 other railways companies in what formed the National State Railway Company known as SNCF. When the war ended, the French branch of the Rothschild family took over what was left of the Paris Orleans and turned it into a holding company, offering banking activities and services, as well as corporate investments. It was majorly included the Bank Rothschild Bank, a property company called SGIM, an oil company called Frankrep, CIACI Insurance, and a winery company called SGDBR, which is now known as Barons de Rothschild. In 1980, the Paris business had grown big, as it was employing over 2,000 and with an annual turnover of 26 billion francs, which is equivalent to $5 billion in the dollar rates of 1980s. To put it into retrospective, that's the current annual revenue of top companies like China Airlines, LG Corp, Access Capital, Autodesk, Vodafone Idea, Zebra Technologies, Nissin Foods, Samsung Heavy Industry, and Nikon. The Bank Rothschild was eventually nationalized by the socialist French government of François Mitterrand, who renamed it Compagnie Européenne de Banque in 1982. In 1983, Eric de Rothschild and David de Rothschild led a recapitalization of the family business like their ancestors had done in previous centuries under the Paris Orleans, since it was banned from using the family name till 1986, by which the company was then renamed Rothschild and C Bank. After the Second World War ended, the French and British banks made a commitment further to develop their new operations in the United States, which later became known as Rothschild and Corporation. As part of increasing its operation in America, the bank decided to focus on acquisitions and mergers, merchant banking, as well as asset management, which is now widely known for. Entering the 20th century, Rothschild developed further and became more renowned and stronger global organization, enhancing its own ability to land key roles as financial advisors in some of the most important, complex, and renowned acquisitions and mergers. The foundation was laid in the 1980s, when Rothschild took up a major role in the international phenomenon of privatization. Its involvement started from the beginning and grew gradually until it had a pioneering role, which later spread out to over 30 countries around the world. In the recent times, Rothschild has gone on to advise on an over 1,000 completed acquisitions and merger with cumulative value of over $1 trillion. But that's not all. Rothschild & Co. has also been involved as a financial advisor on some of the biggest and most renowned high-profit corporate restructurings around the world. And that's just scratching the surface. In December 1983, Rothschild & Co. entered into the security market by purchasing Smith Brothers, a stock jobber. At the time, the price of gold was fixed for years to come, twice a day at 10:30 and 3 p.m. in a tiny room at Rothschild New Court headquarters located in St. Swithin Lane. Most of the main bullion houses of the world, including the likes of HSBC, Deutsche Bank, Societe Generale, and Scotia Makita, all used an agreed rate as the benchmark price for all gold products and derivatives in the world's markets. During that time, Rothschild Bank traditionally appointed a chairperson. However, the bank had largely withdrawn itself from trading. As a result, the 5 members of the London Bullion Association, HSBC, Deutsche Bank, Societe Generale, and Scotia Makita conducted their twice-a-day meeting over the telephone. The meetings were a tradition as great as the ringing of the bell at the New York Stock Exchange until 2004. In 2003, the English arm of the family, N.M. Rothschild & Sons, and French arm Rothschild & C. Bank announced plans to merge into a single company under the chairmanship of David de Rothschild. The Paris Orleans SCA then became the flagship holding company for the entire Rothschild family business. However, the Paris Orleans are listed on the exchange, such as the family retains control of the entire company. After the merger, which also saw both companies combine their banking activities, Paris Orleans SCA then became the sole owner of the Concordia BV, which is in control of the Rothschild Continuation Holdings AG, which also controls the Rothschild Group banking activities. Rothschild & Co. operates 3 primary businesses. It is engaged in global advisory, which is its investment banking division, wealth and asset management, and merchant banking. However, its financial advisory business brings in most of the yearly revenue. To fully understand how big Rothschild & Co. is, it is regarded by Forbes as the world's best management consulting firms 2023, with an annual revenue of $3.4 billion, assets totaling $20.1 billion, and profit of $905.2 million. According to the company 2022 yearly report, sales from M&A advisory, Rothschild's biggest activity, was 219 million euros. Revenue from structuring and advising on corporate finances rose 4% to 108 million euros, while its wealth and asset management unit fared better, with sales up to 20%. According to Global Data's latest league table, Rothschild & Co. was ranked on the top mergers and acquisition financial advisors in all of Europe. The ranking is done based on the volume and the value of the merger and acquisition deal advised. Rothschild & Co. achieved the #1 spot in Europe in both of those deal values and deal volume, advising a total of 102 deals worth a combined 36.1 billion in the first quarter of 2023. Global Data lead analyst RU2G Bose said, Rothschild & Co. was a clear winner by both volume and value. This was the only firm in the region that managed to advise on more than 100 deals during H1 23. It was also among the only 2 firms with total deal value surpassing $30 billion. However, it was far ahead of the firm occupying the second place by value. Rothschild & Co. advised on 12 deals valued more than $1 billion. If Rothschild & Co. ranking first doesn't mean much, when beating Goldman Sachs, who occupied the second position based on value, definitely makes Rothschild & Co. bigger than most people think. Goldman Sachs' value advised deals worth $30.8 billion and was closely followed by, guess who? HSBC with $23.7 billion, Morgan Stanley with $21.7 billion, and Moelis & Company with $21.1 billion. Rothschild & Co. surpassed some of the most renowned banking institutions in the world, so it shows how big it has grown since it was established over 100 years ago. The runner-ups in terms of volume of deals advised were PwC, which had 80 deals, followed by KPMG with 74 deals, Ernst & Young with 63 deals, and Clearwater International with 54 deals. Also, according to more data from Global Data's latest league table, Bank of America and Rothschild & Co. were the 2 top banking companies for merger and acquisition financial advisors in Africa and the Middle East region in the first quarter of 23. Bank of America took the first spot by the value of advising deals worth $9.9 billion, while Rothschild & Co. led the volume as it advised a total of 5 deals. Global Data lead scientist RU2G Bose said, Bank of America was just shy of hitting the $10 billion mark in total deal value in H1 23. As a result, it's not only led by value, but it also outpaced its peers by a significant margin. Bank of America also occupied the 6th position by volume. Similarly, Rothschild & Co., which led the chart by volume, occupied the 5th position by value. JP Morgan came second in terms of value by advising on $4.9 billion worth of deals, followed by Lazard with $1.3 billion, Goldman Sachs with $1.3 billion, and Rothschild & Co. with $1.3 billion. After several years of existence, the Rothschild & Co. company is finally setting up with the biggest banking companies in the world. In terms of revenue generated, profit made, assets owned, and deals closed, it's not just an average company, it's way bigger than you think. If you enjoyed watching this video, do leave a like and subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories and hidden secrets about your favorite companies, families, and people.